Welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast, where we discuss business solutions to help listeners develop and implement action plans for true lean process improvement. I am your host, Patrick Adams. Hello and welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast. Our guest today is Michael Bremer. In addition to being an author and Shingo Research and Publication Award recipient for his book, How to Do a Gemba Walk, Michael has been involved in a variety of experiences over the years, including Director of Productivity and later Director of Information Systems for Beatrice Foods. He was the Chief Financial Officer and Board Member for the Association of Manufacturing Excellence, or AME, and President of the Cumberland Group in Chicago for 28 years. Michael served as an adjunct faculty for the University of Chicago's Graham School for about a 15-year period, and also served as a senior mentor at a new business startup incubator focused on manufacturing in Chicago. So welcome to the show, Michael.
Thanks a lot for having me, Patrick. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it as well. You and I have connected here and there over LinkedIn, and it's great to finally, be face to face and kind of face to face, I guess. But it's good to have you on and chat with you. I'm excited to talk a little bit about today about the topic of Gemba walks and maybe look at some different techniques and things and just kind of pick apart or dive into your book in a few different areas. But I'd love to just start out today by getting your perspective on what is different about organizations that are highly effective at improving in comparison to those that are not, right? So, let's just, again, that's a very high level question, a lot to unpack there, I'm sure. But, what, in your experience, what would you say is different about organizations that, are considered, highly effective in comparison to those that are not?
Well, there's a number of differences, obviously, sure. But it's funny because I think it's safe to say that every organization does a better job of improving today than they did when I started doing this type of work inside Beatrice Foods in the late 1970s. And so when organizations go about this, these tools are powerful. The tools are old. Most of these tools come out of the world of industrial engineering. Right. They're used very differently today than they were used, 50, 100 years ago. But they're the same basic analytical tools. Are when we talk about this PDCA, that was you can attribute to Sheward or to Deming, with the plan, do, check, act, or adjust. There's so many variations of that exists in the world today. I think the difference lies in the fact that you can use these tools and you can make improvement happen. And what people don't understand is how much improvement is possible. So one aspect is they really don't understand the depth of these tools, and so they use them and they get some improvement, but they don't realize that they could possibly get certainly a 5-fold, maybe even a 10-fold increase in what it is they're doing. And There's a tendency to believe that that's not possible. So one is the lack of understanding. I think that the second one, I'll share three things. The second one is it's hard work to really be effective in improving. The discipline that it takes to stay on top of this, to be open to learning and going. It is really difficult to be hard. And most of us, if you think about professional athletes, and most of us do not have the discipline to maximize our capability in whatever sport that it is that we do. Even if we're not going to make the majors in that particular event, most of us could get. I play golf. Sure. Yeah, and at one time I was a 95 to 105 guy, and now I'm kind of an 87 to 93 type guy. So I'm playing better. I improved my game, but if I really wanted to spend the time to do it, I could certainly be a high 70s, low 80s player, but I don't want to work that hard. I go out, I want to have fun. I want to enjoy myself. And within the world of improvement, there's so much stuff that's going on. They don't realize the gap that's there when they're going about this. And then I think the third thing, and this will touch on some of the other questions that we talked to, is the lack of clarity of what it is we're trying to accomplish and why it is that we're trying to do that. Then I'm sure I'll have an opportunity to share a story of something that happened just this past year that pretty much illustrates that. But really over the last 10 years, I focus more and more on clarity of purpose. I love Karen Martin's book where she talks about clarity first. And
Yes.
and so that whole idea of being crystal clear what it is you're doing. But the reason you want that clarity is because if I've got that, I can begin to measure myself and test myself against that. So in fact, if I wanted to be a golfer that could shoot, let's say, a 78, which in my world today would be an impossibility, that I mean, if that was what I was really striving to do, then there's things I would need to, there's work I would need to be doing to make that happen. I'm perfectly set. I mean, if I shoot an 88, I'm a happy boy, and and if I shoot a 95, I'm unhappy, but it doesn't change a whole lot of the way that I approach my game.
Right. Well, and I think that you bring up a really good point. And this is a question that I always ask people. You know, what problem are we trying to solve? Right? Because if we're just out there working our butts off and trying to be busy, but you know, we have no idea why we're doing what we're doing, then what's the point, right? We're just creating waste in what we do, right? I mean, you wouldn't just, you know, go to the golf course and be really busy driving around the course. You're not going to get any better at golf that way, right? So I think you have to understand, like, what problem are you trying to solve? And you know, so I think that kind of helps create a little bit of clarity around, you know, why we're doing what we're doing. Would you agree?
I would agree. That I mean, we share this story now. I suppose earlier this year, I was doing a site visit for the Association of Manufacturing Excellence. You know, in my retirement, I love being involved with AME because it kind of keeps me engaged in this world that I care a lot about.
Yes.
And we were at a site that the leadership team was, I mean, they were very, very good. They had done some outstanding things over the last 3 years, I think, to make some major changes to that business, to continue to move it forward, to allow it to prosper. But what we were evaluating, what we were assessing at this point in time was how AME's process is focused on how effectively is an organization going about the business of improvement. So that whole idea of what's the difference between average and very good.
Right.
And so one of the things, it's a big facility, about 3,000 employees. They had 5 different buildings. And so during the site visit, one of the things they were going to do, the leadership team was going to do a Gemba walk. So we went to observe their Gemba walk. And before they started, I said, well, tell me the purpose of your Gemba walk. And they said, well, the purpose is to show the people that we care, and we want to do something on safety. And so the general manager, who is an outstanding leader, I mean, just really, really impressed with what she was doing to run that business. The VP of Ops was there, several younger engineers and department folks. And so they start their walk, and what they really were doing was an inspection. They're going into all the nooks and the crannies of this building and looking for things that could be safety, you know, related. They did not talk to one operator. When they came out, they had a list of things that needed to be changed. They didn't introduce me to anybody that was there within that facility. And so, and I don't want to contaminate the process when we're doing an observation. So, you know, so they're able to do their whole thing. But when they were done, I said, so let's go back into the purpose that it was that, you know, you said you're trying to accomplish here. You know, we're going to show the people we care. And in their minds, because they were focused on safety, that the belief was that shows people we care because the leadership team is concerned about safety. And I get that. But if I'm an operator in that building, or even if I'm a first line supervisor in that building, and these people all come in and they're going in all the nooks and crannies, and then they're going to give us a list in our building of stuff is we need to do to fix. There's a couple of things that are out of alignment with a highly effective improvement practice. Number one, that purpose was not being fulfilled. I mean, it was the people were not feeling really good that these folks are in here doing this. So they're missing on that. They're really doing work that the people in that building should have been doing. So what they should have been looking at, and I think this is another challenge because you talked about problems. We like to go and solve problems, but what I really need to be focused on continuously, if I want to be highly effective improvement, is processes, which Deming talked about in the 1950s, Deming was talking about looking at processes. And so the question for the leadership team is, why did our process allow this fire extinguisher to be, blocked by a whatever? It's not that somebody needs to go remove the obstacle that's in front of the fire extinguisher, which was not something that was not something that was going on at this facility. I'm just making that up. Sure. But they've got to be making certain that the processes are stable and in alignment, and they're developing the people and their awareness of processes as well. And I think that's where the hard work becomes in doing this, because it's so much easier to go fix the problem. Or to find the problem and assign somebody to fix it. That's not being highly effective in improvement. I mean, that's the normal thing that it's an average thing that if there's a problem, of course we want to fix the problem.
Sure. No, it's so true. And if you have, for many organizations that I go into, I see they have one or two sole problem solvers at their organization that are kind of the go-to leaders, you normally in a leadership position, and they're running around like a chicken with his head cut off, trying to take care of everything, right? When they have this whole army of potential problem solvers that they could be engaging and involving in the process, to your point, right? Developing their skill sets so that it's not all the problem solving isn't dependent on one person, right? And to your point, that they're really getting to the root of, why did that problem occur? What is behind that problem that's actually causing it to happen, and solving that, right?
It really is. Your comment reminds me. During my life, people periodically gave me gifts to help me. That whole idea of learning to see. To see things that I previously didn't understand. When I was working at Beatrice, I ran a department that had people that were working for me. I was a reasonable manager. I got my people promoted. I was good at giving them the credit and all of that stuff. And then when I started consulting in the mid 80s, I knew that it was important to engage people and do all this problem solving stuff and have all these teams. And in the early 90s, I was really just beginning to have more of that Toyota focus on the work that we were doing in our consulting organization. And I was at a manufacturing plant in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I was teaching them how to do Kaizen teams. And so we had done a Kaizen team on a relatively complicated manufacturing line, made some neat changes to it. We presented to management. Everybody loved the changes we made, and we're back in the room. And I'm getting ready to fly back to Chicago, where we lived at the time. And and so I said, well, you 8 folks, you spend a week of your life, working at this thing. What'd you get out of it? And we go around the room and everybody says really nice stuff. And then we come to Pearlie, and Pearlie gave me a gift that really changed my life. Pearlie said that, I worked for this company for 25 years, and it's the first time they ever asked me to think, and I really liked it. And the gift that Pearlie gave me at that moment is I had an intellectual understanding of the importance of engaging people. And I knew about that. I was totally obtuse in having an emotional understanding of the drain that is there on the people inside an organization from not being able to be fully engaged and fully respected for those talents and capabilities that you were talking about, that are there. And it forever changed the way that I talked about improvement, the way I talked to leadership teams, the way that I did my work, as I tried to create more space for more Pearlies, to be able to grow and use their capabilities. And when that happens, you can see these people grow before your eyes. It's absolutely fascinating.
It is. It's such a blessing to be part of teams when, in organizations when that happens. It's great. Love the story. And also I wanted to back up to your previous story as well, because you mentioned the term Gemba Walks, which is what you wrote your book on, and you've had several articles published around the topic. There's probably the majority of people that are listening have heard of a Gemba Walk before or been part of one. But just to kind of level set in our listener base, can you define what is a Gemba Walk? If you were to answer that question, what would you say?
Sure, but Two things. First of all, Gemba walks are also not new. There was something called management by walking around that Peters and Waterman in the book In Search of Excellence made famous. One of the very first business books I ever read about business improvement. And the and a Gemba walk is management by walking around with a purpose. And so the Gemba term, Genba, Genichi, Gembu, well, however that is. I mean, these are Japanese terms, and I try not to use Japanese terms in the work that I do, but that's a particular thing that people attribute to Toyota. And so when I wrote that book, if I wanted people to understand what I was talking about, I kind of needed to use the Gemba walk term, and all that it means. This most simplistic definition is to go to where action is happening inside your organization, and you want to see with your own eyes rather than looking at a report what it is that's going on. So a Gemba walk is simply going to where work is being done. A lot of times people say just value adding work, and then there's this whole definition of, well, what adds value? Are the people in the accounting department that are doing the financial stuff not adding value to our organization? Is the engineering department not adding value to the organization? I really want to go and I want to see within the organization, what is it that's happening? And I can learn a lot. This is another thing though, where when I do this walk, I need to learn to let go of the biases and the assumptions that I've made. And it's one of the few things I need to do where I've got to slow down, which was difficult for me to learn because I always wanted to go fast.
Right.
But slowing down so that you can really begin to see what it is that's happening. And so that Gemba walks, the thing I like about them is it's one of the few improvement tools that when we talk about culture change, as I'm going and I'm interacting with people and I'm talking and asking questions, I can also directly impact the culture of my organization and begin to shift it in a new direction.
Sure. Yeah, that's so true. And so with a Gemba walk, we always like to, Gemba, like you said, the place where the action is happening or the work is happening. Some examples, because like you mentioned, accounting, even a car salesman has a Gemba, right?
Yeah,
which would be out in the parking lot where the cars are being sold, right? And an accounting person has their own Gemba, and it could be in the computer potentially if that's where all of their work is being done.
Sure. Well, in the case of software development, yeah. Absolutely. Sure.
Absolutely. So, everyone has a Gemba, and the Gemba walk obviously happens at the Gemba. I've been involved in so many organizations where, they're sitting around a room or a conference table and not calling it a Gemba walk, but kind of acting like they're, discussing things that are happening, and they have really no clue with what they think is happening, and what they're putting down on paper. But what's actually happening really is only known when you go out, to your point, and actually see with your eyes what's really going on. Right. Well, you gone out and saw something completely different than what you thought was the case.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And when you first start doing these things, you need to be, and those early walks, the one thing you'll see is first of all, you see things that reinforce your beliefs. And so you gotta be willing to let go of some of those and say, well, I'm going to be open-minded and try to see what it is that's really happening. And you get that seeing by conversation. And the other thing that there's a challenge when people start doing Gemba walks, they very often think the purpose of the walk is to go find waste. And if you're a first-line supervisor and you're doing walks, and every time you do a walk, you're finding more problems in the organization that need to be fixed, what typically happens is you say, whoa, I don't have enough time to deal with all these problems that it is that I'm coming up with. And so they'll stop doing them because they're overwhelmed with there's more than they can possibly do. And so to keep those things fresh and meaningful, there's shifts that need to get made to the process.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about those. But first, if someone who's listening, maybe that they're hearing about Gemba walks for the first time, or maybe they've done them, frequently and just kind of not sure if they're doing it the right way. What would you say are the basic steps to conducting a good Gemba walk? What would the steps look like?
I bucketed it into three distinct buckets. The first one is preparation. So where are we going? Who's going? If there's 2 or 3 people, how are we going to have conversations that are there in the workplace so we're not overwhelming the people that is we're looking at? Is one person going to be talking, or could we all talk and play off one another? I mean, there's no right or wrong thing here. Let's just plan where we're going, how long we're going to be there, what we think we'll be doing with the anything that it is that we find. So it's a preparation phase.
Okay.
The second step is do the walk. And the reason that I wrote that book, How to Do a Gemba Walk, is because at that time, all of the literature that I could find just talked about doing the walk. It didn't talk about this preparation or this third step that I'll go to. And when you're doing the walk, I mean, the classic stuff that they say is, I want to show respect. I want to ask questions. I want to see. That's where I'm seeing what it is that's happening, and I have the dialogue. And then the last step is, after every walk, I should debrief, even if I did it just by myself. So I'm just doing a debrief where I'm taking some notes on what it is that I saw. There should be a debrief that takes place when the walk is complete. And were there any decisions that were made during the walk? Are there any actions that it is that need to be followed up on? Is there anyone that I need to be communicating with or to as a result of what it was that we learned here? Or if I've got a group of people, what did we learn, from her doing it? What are the decisions of the group? Where is it that I'm still taking actions? That's not the same thing as going out and looking for a laundry list of problems. I mean, it's all, we're always going to be seeing things that needs to be dealt with. But I think the perspective shifts for people to do this a little more effectively.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I think about some of the companies that I've seen doing Gemba walks, and sometimes they end up with this big laundry list of items that becomes overwhelming very quickly, and maybe they don't have the capacity to complete the action items that they're finding. And again, a lot of them end up just stopping. They just stop doing Gemba walk because they're like, well, there's too much here. So what would you say what would your advice be for those that do, like, what should we do with this laundry list? Should we continue just adding to it, or is there something else we can do?
Well, I'm not a fan of adding to the laundry list. So, well, it goes back a little bit to the example that we talked about earlier, where they were in doing the inspection and finding all this stuff, and then they got this list that somebody needs to execute. Are your example of where you had the 2 people, and so we do the walk, and then we got these 2 people that do stuff, and so we hand it off to them to Mac and Mary. Mac and Mary, okay, here's more work you just need to do. This is where I go back to purpose. And so let's say you were my first line supervisor, and I'm going to be, and they're typically doing multiple walks if they're in a manufacturing environment or even in a software development environment. You could be doing this. And so so on Tuesday, I'm going to take a walk, and on my Tuesday walk, I want to look at safety. And so I'm just going through to look at the, things that are going on, the layout of the facility, and, what is it that's happening there from a safety perspective. And then typically we're doing huddle meetings, some sort of meetings. And so if there's things that are coming up, there's not necessarily this list of problems, but there's conversations I can have with the team for things that it is we need to be addressing. We need to be careful about. On Wednesday, when I do my walk, maybe I want to do a walk focused on our standard work practices. And so are people following what it is that are the whatever guidelines it is that we've laid out for our standard work? So I've got a very, very clear purpose. On this walk today, I'm going to look at this specific element. Or even within safety, I'm going to do a safety walk, but I know we've been having some ergonomic issues. And so my walk on Tuesday is going to be to look at ergonomics with what it is we're doing. So I'm a subset, within that world of safety. And so if you get focused on these things, that really helps us with what it is that we need to see. Because I got this laser-like look, and I'm very conscious of what it is that I'm trying to do. I'm not looking at this big general thing. And when you start doing the walks, you kind of need to learn how to do the walk. You need to learn how the conversations, and so you really don't know what it is you should be doing there. You're figuring it all out, and that's okay. But you don't want to get trapped where I just go out and keep adding to the laundry list. And I think you get out of that by having much more, and the purpose is related to issues that it is that we're having. And it's not just some general thing that is that we're doing. I mean, I'm doing a safety walk for a reason. I'm looking at leader standard work for a reason, because it's, we're having some issues. within the organization. When I do a walk, I'm typically going in to look at the way value flows through an organization. And so the purpose of my walk is pretty clear. I want to look for what, and when I do the walk, it's unlikely I'm going to see an issue. I mean, but when you have the conversations, well, is this what typically happens? Do any interruptions ever take place? If I'm in software, I'm looking at a group doing software development. I mean, the question you can ask them, that's always an issue, is did you have all the information that you needed when you were starting the assignment? you never do. And sometimes that's due to the nature of the process. And sometimes that's due to the nature of the project that you're working on, that you got to go through learning and you got to figure things out. And so there's no way you could have known this at the beginning. But other times it's the process with, the longer that it takes to develop the software, the fuzzier the whole process is going to be. So that whole idea of moving toward agile and using scrum teams, that sort of thing, that the whole idea is to compress the time that it is taking to do a deliverable, which again makes the cycle easier of knowing what it is we should be doing. And sure. So if I get this purpose to be really clear, I've seen that then give a lot more meaning to the walks that people are accomplishing and re-energize them on what it is they should be doing. Although I've got to test then, like the example that I talked about where they thought they were focused on showing people that they cared. I need to test my purpose. So the thing that I've got to be doing with whatever the purpose is, and I believe you can do this with any of the main lean tools. I've got a purpose for doing leader standard work. I've got a purpose for doing a Gemba walk. How am I going to measure what's the target that we're moving toward, and how am I going to measure my progress toward that target? And so when I talk about keeping these things fresh, I think if I've got clarity of purpose, and then there's a way that I'm measuring this, and I suggest that we publicly post these things that are important to what it is we're trying to achieve, because what I've seen where I publicly post this is it can drive more collaboration and cooperation and engagement of the team. Sure. The first discussions are, do people agree with the data that I've got on the board? Or is that, do people have a different perspective? And so let's get something we're posting that people agree with the metrics that are going on there. And then as I drive that progress, people see these things and inevitably they want to do things so that it's a positive trend. And so it can be very, very powerful. And then once you begin, I guess another difference between an elite organization and an average organization is the stability of their processes. That so often early in an improvement journey, your processes aren't stable. So you implement an improvement and the improvement doesn't get sustained. And people say, well, that's because people are resistant change. But that's not usually what's happening. I mean, usually there's other stuff that's going on that's undermining this. It's this phenomenal amount of variation that's taking place and people trying to deal with stuff. And so if I get this process to stabilize, then that makes being able to see what it is that's going on and all sorts of things, much easier.
Absolutely. No, that's completely true. And I love that clarity of purpose part for a Gemba walk. I mean, some of the things that you talked about, just to kind of, I think you talked about, walking the flow path of a product or service. You could be doing a 5S. Maybe it's an audit or call it whatever you want, but it could be a safety audit, it could be a waste walk. You mentioned that. I mean, all of in defining that purpose ahead of time. And to your point, I think you said someone you worked with did one on one day and then did a different type of Gemba walk on another day. What do you think about when you're doing Gemba walks? Should they be done alone? Should you engage with, I think we talked about engaging with the people that are at the Gemba, but is there opportunity for coaching during a Gemba walk as well?
Well, let's say you're a first line supervisor, and you're probably doing those walks, by yourself, or maybe there's one other person that's doing the walks with you. But I think there's power in if periodically, and periodically to me would be, let's say, quarterly, that I have one of the other supervisors that in the area observe my doing a Gemba walk, or even my boss, if I've got a good relationship that's there, have my boss come in and observe me doing a Gemba walk. And from that observation, and I share with them, here's the purpose of this walk, and get some feedback then from my peer or from my leader on what's going on there. There's another very, very powerful tool. I'm actually doing a new book called, this is what we've been talking about, Learn to See the Invisible. That whole idea of practicing to be able to see things tomorrow that we don't see today. And there's a super simple feedback thing that project teams use all the time called keep, stop, start. And so I can do a keep, stop, start with my team. So hey, we're doing these Gemba walks. I'm not, hopefully not just doing them to you. What do you think we should keep doing? Is there anything you think we should stop doing? Is there something that you think we should start doing? Which is another way that I could get some, and whenever I've done that with project teams, you get a 2x2 Post-it. So it's not a phenomenal amount of feedback. You don't have to write a report. You don't have to give me one of all three. If you just got to stop or start or whatever, just pop it up there. And and so using that to get some coaching, from your team. There's lots of simple ways that we can go about doing this. But I think periodically having somebody observe what it is you're doing, and then you go observe what it is that they're doing. That's pretty simple, and you don't have to hire a consultant or any of that stuff to come in and make something happen. Absolutely.
I was just thinking as you were talking about, just doing Gemba walks with, with your boss or with a fellow supervisor, whatever it may be. I was at an organization one time where they had a Gemba walk board, and I was reading through some of the action items, and one of the action items on the board was pick up the trash in the middle of the floor. And I looked at the area and there was some crumpled up paper in the middle of the floor. And I remember, because I've worked at many different organizations on the spectrum, both sides, but I also remember walking through a plant doing a Gemba walk with an executive leader one time who saw some trash on the floor, and instead of writing it down as an action item, she actually picked it up. Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Which would make sense, right? But I guess I want to ask you, where do you draw the line? What goes on an action item list? Because I think you and I would be in agreement that the right thing to do is just to go pick up the trash. Right. At what point do you put something on an action item list versus taking care of it yourself when you're out doing a Gemba walk?
Well, let's go back to the story that I used earlier about the very good leadership team. I was really impressed with what they were doing. But they were doing work that should have been done by the folks in that building. And so part of it is what is it that we're trying to do to sensitize the people that are on my team, or in this case in this building, to our processes. What are the things I'm trying to do from a development perspective? Certainly with the trash example, I mean, there's just the mere fact that the executive reaches down and picks that up, that you've got a role model that's there that shows that this isn't acceptable, and here's the behavior I'm looking for everybody to be doing. So that's very, very powerful. And so doing that, but you don't want to trap the leaders into doing things that should be done. I hate talking about it from a hierarchy, but by the people that are doing the work in that area, whatever it is that's going on. And so from my perspective, the leader is responsible for thinking about, why did our process allow this to happen? And the work of solving the problem or doing the fixes, generally 80% of the time, should be done by the folks that they're doing the work. And then I'm responsible as a leader to make certain that they've got time to be able to do that they can't be, the problem with most first line supervisors is, number one, we've decimated the ranks. So there's many fewer of those than there used to be. They're under really phenomenal time pressures. And so if I wanted to be doing these other things, what is it that we're doing to allow them time to help the organization move towards stabilizing the processes, to help them have time to be developing, their team members. And so I can't just look at the problem that's there, but I keep needing to go back to the context, the situation of the problem. And that's the challenge. That's, again, the difference between the organization that's elite and those that are doing, most organizations are not dysfunctional, because the dysfunctional organizations disappear. Most of them do an average, okay job of improving. They're not a terrible place to work. But I I mean, the first time I went into an organization that was highly effective at improving, and I had been doing this work for quite some time, so I think I had enough seasoning to be able to grasp what was going on. I was amazed. I mean, people visited Toyota for 50 years, but very few of them came back to emulate the holistic Toyota system. And that's because most of them didn't understand the depth and all of the things that are going on. They saw the artifacts. So they saw that they've got these huddle boards, and they've got these, they do these Gemba walks, and they do the standard work thing. And so we come back and we use those tools, but that isn't the same thing. That's not what Toyota's doing. That's the surface stuff that's easy to see. And it takes a while, I think, to it's impossible to deeply understand this stuff at the outset until you go through a bunch of learning cycles. And that's part of why most people aren't elegant at doing it.
So true.
And again, it's no different from the professional athlete. I mean, professional athlete became a professional athlete because a whole lot of learning cycles, that went on. There's a long journey that's there, and we see something that looks elegant, and we think, oh man, that's just a thing of beauty. Well, that ain't where it started.
That's right. Well, and for every organization, their learning cycles are going to be completely different, depending on, what industry they're in, if we're out in a manufacturing plant versus in an operating room or in an office. I mean, the learning cycles are going to be completely different. So understanding that, and the fact that, again, looking at how Toyota did things versus maybe how other organizations are doing them, just because their Gemba Walk process maybe ended up a little bit different than Toyota's, that's okay, because maybe that's where they've developed their tool set based on various learning cycles that they've went through.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the learning is what's that's the part that's so important. I mean, you see these other things, and you can certainly learn from those things, but the idea isn't to take them and just copy them, and hope to do that. You need you individually, and then I got to be doing things for the people in my organization to help them develop. Because at the end of the day, it is culture change.
Absolutely.
We are, and it's so much is the culture change comes from behavior change, and so going through and figuring out what are the behaviors that I need to change as a leader to move toward this new target that it is that we're trying to do. And I think that the people that I know that have done this the best all went through personal transformations of the way they did what they did. And so they made changes first. And as they made changes, then they were able to begin to influence others on making change. I can't just dictate this stuff and have it happen, which is a bummer, because we don't all like to be able to dictate. But I mean, if you've ever been a parent and you tell stuff to your kids,
that's right.
Like you're talking to a wall. But if you're consistent and if you're role modeling what it is you're talking about, you have more influence. You don't have absolute influence, but you got more influence if the things that I'm suggesting to. I mean, our children understand the values of my wife and I, and they've developed their own similar value set and what they're doing as parents and the way they're going about it. I mean, the world is different. There's tons of stuff that's different for their parenting today, from us. But the things that were important, maybe we're fortunate, but they came away with a reasonable understanding.
Right. Well, and there's so much complexity in everything that we're talking about. It's not easy. And I'm just bringing it full circle back to what you talked about earlier, is that this is hard work. It's not easy. It does take a lot of intentional effort and consistency, and a willingness to be flexible as learning cycles happen, to end up, or I guess you never really end up, you become whatever it is because, again, to your point, as things are changing, even our behaviors may need to change in order to match up with where the organization is going, where things are going from a technology standpoint. I mean, things are changing continuously. And earlier you mentioned, and you've also written a couple articles on this, but about keeping your Gemba Walks fresh. So as we're working through all of this, and it's difficult, and we're dealing with people, and things are happening, how do we keep our Gemba Walks fresh? And what do you mean when you say keeping Gemba Walks fresh?
Look, it comes back to something that we touched on previously. To me, if you really go back and have this clarity of purpose of why am I doing the walk, that all by itself could give more meaning to what it is that I'm doing. Absolutely. And so when I'm trying to keep them fresh, I've been doing these things for a while. So I got the basic idea of, oh yeah, I'm supposed to figure out what I'm doing. You know, we go do the walk. Hopefully I'm doing them in a halfway decent way where I'm showing respect. I'm asking okay questions. And we're doing these debriefs. So that's kind of the basics that are there, right? So I've got this basic set that's going okay. And somebody does a LinkedIn SlideShare search for my last name and Gemba Walks. There's a deck that's in LinkedIn SlideShare that's had like 110,000 views. That they can pull something out that talks about that basic stuff. But what I really now start to do is this laser focus with so why is it that I'm going through and doing this, and then just making it 2 steps here. And then how are we progressing toward that? That can really help to keep these things, I think, much more powerful as you're doing this. And so you're getting very almost laser-like things it is that we're focused on within the organization to progress us toward what it is that we're trying to accomplish. At the end of the day, I need to be achieving the results that are important. So this organization that we did a site visit earlier this year. They did not become an AME Excellence Award recipient, but we gave them a feedback report. We talked about the Gemba Walks and a couple of other things. What they did though with this laser-like focus is they took the top 5 recommendations from our report, one of which talked about there's things that they could have been doing to increase capacity of the work that it is they're doing. Talked about the way this idea of purpose. They adopted, within a couple of months, implemented the top 5 recommendations that we had, and they onboarded 5 new customers for their business. And onboarding a new customer for their business is a big deal. I mean, and they've got a very good process for onboarding, a world-class process for doing that. But they didn't have the capacity for doing that. And so going through and doing that, and I think when you keep these things fresh and meaningful, I've got this laser-like focus, and I'm seeing the results that are coming from that. And so there's a reinforcement there that oh, this is worthwhile. The way you know that this is working or not is do I look forward to doing this? So if I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I got to go do this Gemba walk at 10 o'clock in the morning and I got to get out there. Well, there's something wrong with the way that it is that I'm approaching this. So if you cannot look at this as something that is a worthwhile use of your time, then how can I modify this tool in a way that is going to make it more meaningful for myself and the people that it is that I'm interacting with? And if I get it to that spot, and to me, that purpose is one of the things that helps, and then the feedback loop keeps me going. They can become more meaningful, and I've seen people do it.
Yeah, what a great measure of determining whether or not you're doing it right or not. Right? Are you finding joy in going out and interacting with team members and identifying opportunities, or is it does it cause you headaches? Is it a burden? Does it feel like a burden to you? Maybe it needs to be refreshed. Love that. Michael, if people want to get some more information about Gemba Walks, I'd love to get them access to your book. Where should they go to get your book? On Amazon?
I'm like Katie Anderson. I'm not a good marketing machine. Katie Anderson, my friend, I know you've interviewed Katie. Katie's phenomenal marketing. So for me, again, if you do Gemba Walks in my last name and you go to Amazon, the book is there. I think I just self-publish it, but I think it's sold more than 10,000 copies since 2016. Great. So for a self-published thing, it's not a New York Times bestseller, but it's done okay.
No, that's great. What we'll do is we'll actually put it in the show notes with a link directly to the Amazon page. So listeners want to go and grab a copy of your book, they can go right to the show notes, click on the link and find it there. And then you're pretty active on LinkedIn. So if someone wants to reach out with a question, would that be the place that they would go?
Totally. I'm happy to do that. I am retired, but I'm still quite passionate about the, what is going on here. I would also suggest, if people are not familiar with the Association of Manufacturing Excellence, that I've learned a lot from the network that I built there over the years. And one of the exciting things that once we started doing the physical meetings again the last 2 years was how many young people were there in the organization. I think we had 1,200 attendees at the conference in Cleveland a month ago.
Yeah.
And there were so many young people there. And when I first got involved with AME, I was in my late 30s, and I formed a network of people that I know to this day, and it was invaluable to my learning journey. And so it was the most diversified group of ethnicity, men, women, age. I mean, it was phenomenal. I just loved seeing it.
Yeah.
And so to get involved with there are somewhere else where you can go and you can, you can learn, that can be very, very powerful to helping you progress in your learning journey.
Absolutely. And we'll put a link to AME's page in the show notes as well. So listeners can go there and check out AME. Well, thank you for being part of AME, for the volunteer work that you did there, and just for your continued support of the lean community, and appreciate you continuing to put. You said you have another book coming out. So thank you for just sharing your knowledge with all of us, and as we continue to grow and learn. And thanks for being on the show, Michael.
Thanks a lot, Patrick. I enjoyed the conversation. You take care. Have a great day, and best wishes to you for the coming holidays and New Year.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe. This way you'll get updates as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please give us a review. Thank you so much.